Get your trashy luggage and get out of my first-class cabin, or I will have security drag you down the aisle in handcuffs. The shriek tore through the silence of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner, freezing every passenger in their seats. At the front of the plane, a young black man in a gray hoodie sat calmly in seat 1A, clutching a boarding pass. Looming over him was the head flight attendant, her face twisted in a sneer, pointing a manicured finger toward the economy section. Beside her, the pilot crossed his arms, shaking his head with a smug grin. They thought he was a squatter. They thought he was nobody. They had no idea that the man they were humiliating wasn't just a passenger. He was the man who had signed their paychecks 5 minutes ago. And before this plane touched the ground, their lives would be over. The rain hammered relentlessly against the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of JFK International Airport's Terminal 4. Inside the exclusive lounge, the air smelled of expensive espresso and old money, but Damon King just wanted to sleep. Damon pulled the hood of his charcoal gray sweatshirt further over his head. It was a $40 sweatshirt he'd bought at a gas station 3 years ago, frayed at the cuffs and sporting a small coffee stain near the pocket. To the casual observer, Damon looked like a tired college student, or perhaps a backpacker who had wandered into the wrong part of the airport. He certainly didn't look like the CEO of King Global Ventures, the private equity firm that had just quietly acquired a controlling stake in Skyline Airways, the very airline he was about to board. Final boarding call for Flight 808 to London Heathrow. The intercom chimed. Damon stood up, stretching his aching back. He had spent the last 72 hours in a windowless boardroom in Manhattan, negotiating the hostile takeover of Skyline. The airline was failing, plagued by terrible customer service, aging planes, and a toxic management culture. Damon's mission was to clean house, but he hadn't planned on starting the job until Monday morning. Right now, he just wanted to get to London to see his sister's newborn baby. He picked up his battered duffel bag and walked toward the gate. The gate agent, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, scanned his digital boarding pass without looking up. The machine beeped a solid affirmative green. "Seat 1A," she muttered, handing his passport back. Then she paused, actually looking at him for the first time. Her eyes flicked from his frayed hoodie to the first class designation on the screen. She frowned, typing something into her keyboard. "Is there a problem?" Damon asked, his voice deep and raspy from lack of sleep. "No," she said slowly, her suspicion evident. "Just unusual. Have a safe flight." Damon didn't take offense. He was used to it. He walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel waking him up slightly. He stepped onto the plane, turning left toward the first-class cabin. The cabin was pristine, bathed in soft blue LED lighting. It was empty, save for a flight attendant organizing champagne flutes in the galley. She was tall, with severe blonde hair pulled back into a tight bun, and a name tag that read Brenda St. James. Damon found seat 1A, a spacious, enclosed suite with a lie-flat bed. He tossed his duffel bag into the overhead bin and collapsed into the leather seat, closing his eyes. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, icy, and dripping with condescension. Damon opened one eye. Brenda St. James was standing over him, her hands on her hips. She wasn't smiling. "Can I help you?" Damon asked. "You are in the wrong seat," Brenda stated flatly. She didn't ask to see his ticket. She didn't check a manifest. She just looked at his hoodie, his skin color, and his bag, and made a decision. "Economy boarding is to the right. This is first class. It is for paying customers." Damon sighed, reaching into his pocket. "I have a ticket. Seat 1A. He held out the paper pass he'd printed at the kiosk. Brenda snatched it from his hand, staring at it as if it were a piece of contaminated waste. She squinted at the date, the flight number, and the name. "Damon King," she read aloud, her tone mocking. "And how exactly did you get this, Mr. King? Did you find it on the floor? Did you upgrade yourself with a stolen credit card?" Damon sat up straighter, the fatigue beginning to be replaced by a low simmer of irritation. "I bought it. Look, I'm tired. I just want to fly. If you check your tablet, you'll see I'm on the manifest." Brenda let out a short, harsh laugh. "I don't need to check my tablet to know that people dressed like you don't sit in seats like this. This cabin is fully booked. We have VIPs boarding in 5 minutes. Senators, actors, business leaders. I am not having the atmosphere ruined by some street thug trying to scam a free ride." "Street thug?" Damon repeated softly. "Careful with your words." "I'm careful with my cabin," Brenda snapped. "Now, get up. I'm moving you to row 45. There's a middle seat near the lavatory. Take it, or get off my plane. Damon looked at her. He could have told her right then. He could have pulled out his phone, dialed the chairman of the board, and ended her career in 10 seconds. But Damon was a man who believed in gathering evidence. He wanted to see how deep the rot went. I'm not moving, Damon said, buckling his seatbelt. I paid $12,000 for this seat. I'm staying. Brenda's face turned a dangerous shade of red. Oh, you want to play it the hard way? Fine. She spun on her heel and marched toward the cockpit. Minutes later, the first-class cabin began to fill up. A wealthy couple settled into row 2, glancing nervously at Damon. A tech executive in a blazer took seat 3A. Damon ignored them, putting on his noise-canceling headphones. Suddenly, a heavy hand tapped his shoulder. Damon pulled the headphones down. Standing in the aisle was a large man in an expensive, ill-fitting pinstripe suit. He had a flushed face and was sweating slightly. Beside him stood Brenda, looking triumphant. This is the gentleman I was telling you about, Mr. Pellington? Brenda cooed, her voice transforming from shrill to syrupy sweet. He seems to be confused about the seating chart. Mr. Pellington looked down at Damon with a sneer of pure disgust. Listen here, son. I don't know what kind of affirmative action lottery you won, but you're in my spot. Damon checked his ticket again. 1A. Pretty sure this is mine. I am Arthur Pellington, the man boomed, as if the name should cause the heavens to part. I own Pellington Real Estate. I fly this airline 3 times a month. I specifically requested seat 1A because I need the extra legroom for my sciatica. Brenda here says there was a computer glitch that double-booked us. Damon looked at Brenda. She smirked. Computer glitch, she mouthed. It was a lie. A blatant, lazy lie. Pellington hadn't booked 1A. Brenda was trying to bounce Damon to accommodate a high-value regular, using Damon's appearance as the justification. Show me your ticket, Arthur, Damon said calmly. Excuse me? Pellington sputtered. You don't talk to me like that. If it's a double booking, you'll have a ticket that says 1A. Let's see it. Pellington fumbled in his jacket pocket, producing a boarding pass. He held it out. It clearly read 2B. Damon laughed. 2B. You're in the second row, Artie. Sit down. Pellington turned purple. He looked at Brenda. Are you going to let him speak to a platinum member like that? I spend $50,000 a year with this airline. I demand this seat. Brenda stepped forward, her authority brittle and sharp. Mr. King, I am giving you one last chance. Mr. Pellington is a priority passenger. Our policy states that in the event of a conflict, priority status wins. You are being involuntarily downgraded. That's not the policy, Damon said. And you know it. I am the head stewardess, Brenda shouted, causing the entire cabin to go quiet. I make the policy in this cabin. You are disturbing the peace. You are smelling up the first-class area with your odor. You are making our VIP guests uncomfortable. My odor? Damon sniffed his shirt. It smelled of laundry detergent and the faint scent of the expensive cologne he'd applied that morning. Now you're just making things up. I'm getting the captain, Brenda hissed. While she was gone, Arthur Pellington leaned in, invading Damon's personal space. You know, you people are all the same, he whispered, his voice low and venomous. You think because you got a little money or a lucky break, you belong at the big table. You don't. You're a diversity hire, a token. Now be a good boy and go to the back of the bus where you belong. Damon's jaw tightened. The calm facade was beginning to crack. The sheer audacity of the racism was stunning, even for 2025. Arthur, Damon said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. I'm going to give you some free business advice. Go sit in seat 2B. Put on a movie. And shut your mouth. Because if you say one more word to me, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Pellington blinked, momentarily rattled by the steel in Damon's eyes. But before he could respond, the cockpit door flew open. Captain Vance emerged. He was a tall man with silver hair, and the arrogant swagger of a pilot who thought he was God's gift to aviation. He adjusted his hat, glaring at Damon. "What is the problem here?" Vance demanded, his voice booming. "He refuses to move, Captain," Brenda cried, playing the victim. "He's being aggressive," he threatened Mr. Pellington. "He's refusing my direct orders. I don't feel safe flying with him in the cabin." Captain Vance looked at Damon. He didn't see a customer. He saw a nuisance. He saw a problem to be removed so they could push back from the gate and stay on schedule. "Sir," Vance said, leaning over seat 1A, "I don't care who you are. On this vessel, my word is law. Brenda tells me you're causing a disturbance. Grab your bag and get off my plane, now." "I haven't done anything," Damon said, holding his ground. "I have a valid ticket. She is trying to move me because her friend here wants my seat. That is a violation of FAA regulations and airline contract of carriage." "I don't need a law lecture from a kid in a hoodie," Vance shouted. He grabbed Damon's arm. "Up, now, or I'm calling the airport police to have you arrested for interfering with a flight crew. That's a federal felony, son. You want to go to prison over a seat?" The cabin was dead silent. Every eye was on Damon. A woman in row 3 was filming with her phone. Damon looked at the captain's hand on his arm. "Take your hand off me," Damon said. "Then move." Vance shoved him. That was the line. Damon stood up. He didn't grab his bag. He didn't move toward the door. He stood up to his full height, which was 2 inches taller than the captain. "You want me off the plane?" Damon asked, his voice projecting clearly to the back of the cabin. "Fine. But I'm taking everyone else with me." "What is that, a bomb threat?" Pellington screamed. "He's making a threat." "No," Damon said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. "It's a business decision." "You can't make calls!" Brenda shrieked. "Turn that off!" Damon ignored her. He dialed a number. He put it on speaker. The line rang twice. "This is Jonathan Pierce," a voice answered. Jonathan Pierce was the chief of operations for Skyline Airways, the man who ran the entire fleet. "Jonathan," Damon said. "It's Damon King." There was a pause on the line. Then, the tone of the voice on the other end changed instantly, from professional detachment to panicked reverence. "Mr. King? Sir? I didn't expect to hear from you until the board meeting on Monday. Is everything all right? Are you in London?" "No, Jonathan. I'm currently on flight 808 at JFK. I'm standing in seat 1A. Or, I was, until Captain Vance and head stewardess Brenda St. James decided to physically assault me and kick me off the plane to give my seat to their friend." The silence on the speakerphone was deafening. Captain Vance's face went pale. Brenda's mouth dropped open. Even Pellington looked confused. "They did what?" Jonathan Pierce's voice trembled. "You heard me," Damon said, locking eyes with the pilot. "Captain Vance just put his hands on me. He threatened me with federal prison. And Brenda here called me a street thug. I want you to do me a favor, Jonathan." "Anything, sir. Name it." "Who owns this plane, Jonathan?" "Technically, the bank holds the lease, but as of the acquisition this morning, it's an asset of King Global Ventures. It's your plane, sir." "Good," Damon said coldly. "Then I want you to cancel the flight." "Sir?" "Cancel flight 808. Right now. Ground the plane, deplane the passengers, and tell the ground crew to bring the stairs back. Nobody is going to London tonight on this bird." "You can't do that!" Captain Vance stammered, his arrogance evaporating into pure fear. "Who are you?" Damon didn't answer him. He spoke into the phone. "Did you hear me, Jonathan? Ground it." "Yes, Mr. King. Doing it now. I'm contacting the tower." Damon hung up the phone. He looked at the pilot, whose hands were now shaking. He looked at Brenda, who looked like she was about to vomit. "I tried to tell you," Damon said, smoothing his hoodie. "I bought the ticket. Then, I bought the airline." Suddenly, the cabin lights flickered and turned to full bright white. The engines, which had been humming in preparation for taxi, whined down and shut off. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off. The intercom crackled. But it wasn't Captain Vance speaking. It was the gate agent from the terminal. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the interruption. We have received an order from corporate headquarters. Flight 808 has been canceled effectively immediately. All passengers must deplane. We repeat, the flight is canceled. Pandemonium broke out. The silence that had fallen over the cabin following the gate agent's announcement lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then, it shattered into a cacophony of outrage that rivaled the roar of the jet engines. Canceled? Arthur Pellington shrieked, his face turning a dangerous shade of violet. What do you mean, canceled? I have a meeting with the Minister of Finance in London in 8 hours. You can't cancel a flight because of one unruly passenger. The uproar spread backward like a wave. From the economy section, a chorus of groans and angry shouts erupted. The curtain separating the cabins was ripped open, and a confused mass of passengers began to push forward, demanding answers. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. Brenda St. James shouted, her voice cracking. The professional veneer she had worn for 20 years was dissolving, revealing the panic underneath. She grabbed the interphone handset, but her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it. It clattered against the galley wall, swinging by its cord like a pendulum, counting down their demise. Captain Vance, however, was not ready to surrender. He was a man defined by his ego, a man who had never been told no in his own cockpit. The idea that this young man in a hoodie, this nobody, could snap his fingers and ground his aircraft was simply impossible. It had to be a trick, a hack, a coincidence. Vance grabbed the PA microphone, overriding the chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Vance. Please calm down. We are experiencing a technical communications error with the tower. There is a miscommunication. We are not canceled. I repeat, we are not canceled. I am going to have security remove the disruptive individual in seat 1A, and then we will be underway. He glared at Damon, his eyes bulging with rage. You think you're funny, son? You think hacking a phone signal makes you a boss? I'm going to bury you. Damon didn't flinch. He sat back down in seat 1A, crossed his legs, and watched the show. He knew something Vance didn't. Once the ground stop order comes from the COO, the flight plan is wiped from the FAA computers. The fuel trucks were already being recalled. The baggage handlers were likely already cursing as they prepared to unload. Vance was the captain of a ship that had already been scuttled. You're making it worse, Vance, Damon said quietly. If I were you, I'd start updating my resume. Shut up, Vance roared. He pointed to the open cabin door, where 2 airport police officers were hurriedly boarding, their hands resting on their belts. The officers, a burly sergeant named Kowalski and a younger officer named Daniels, scanned the cabin. They saw the shouting passengers, the red-faced pilot, and the calm man in the hoodie. What's the problem here? Sergeant Kowalski barked, his voice booming over the noise. Thank God you're here, Brenda cried, rushing forward and practically throwing herself at the officer. This man, seat 1A, he's a hijacker. He's threatening the safety of the flight. He claims he shut down the plane. You have to arrest him immediately. Pellington jumped in, sensing reinforcements. He threatened to blow us all up. I heard him. He said he was taking everyone with him. He's a terrorist. The word terrorist sucked the oxygen out of the room. The passengers who had been shouting suddenly went dead silent, eyeing Damon with genuine fear. In the post-9/11 world, that accusation was a death sentence. Officer Kowalski's hand moved to his taser. He stepped toward seat 1A, his demeanor shifting from annoyed to tactical. Sir, keep your hands where I can see them. Slowly stand up and step into the aisle. Damon didn't move. He kept his hands resting on the armrests, palms open. He knew that sudden movements in front of nervous cops were a bad idea, especially for a black man in a high-tension environment. Officer, Damon said, his voice steady and calm, these people are lying. I am the owner of this airline. I grounded the flight because the crew is incompetent and abusive. If you check my ID, this will all be over. Stand up, Kowalski yelled, not interested in explanations. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. He's dangerous, Vance shouted, fueling the fire. Don't let him reach for his pockets, Damon sighed. This was the humiliation they wanted. They wanted to see him in cuffs. They wanted to see him dragged off so they could high-five and drink their champagne. He slowly stood up, turning his back to the officer. Kowalski grabbed Damon's wrists, twisting them roughly, and snapping a pair of cold steel handcuffs onto them. The ratchet sound of the cuffs tightening echoed in the silent cabin. "There!" Pellington cheered, clapping his hands. "Lock him up! Throw away the key!" "That's justice!" Brenda sneered, smoothing her skirt, her confidence returning now that Damon was restrained. "You don't mess with my plane!" "Let's go," Kowalski said, shoving Damon toward the door. As they walked past the economy section, passengers jeered. "Loser! Thanks for ruining my vacation." "Get a job!" Damon walked with his head high, ignoring the insults. He knew the truth. He knew that in about 5 minutes, the dynamic was going to shift so violently, it would give everyone in this cabin whiplash. They reached the jet bridge. The cool air hit Damon's face. "Hold on a second, Sergeant," a voice called out from the terminal doorway. A woman in a sharp navy blazer walked briskly down the jet bridge, flanked by 2 men in suits. She held a tablet in her hand and looked like she hadn't slept in a week. It was Margaret Stone, the JFK station manager for Skyline Airways. She was the highest-ranking airline official at the airport. "Margaret!" Captain Vance called out, following the police out of the plane. "Good to see you. We had a situation. This individual disrupted the pre-flight check. I need you to file a report so we can ban him for life. Also, we need to restart the flight plan. The computers are glitching." Margaret ignored Vance. She walked straight up to Sergeant Kowalski and the handcuffed Damon. She looked at Damon's face, then down at the tablet in her hand, which displayed a high-resolution corporate headshot of the new owner. Her face went pale. She looked as if she had just seen a ghost. "Officer Kowalski," Margaret said, her voice trembling. "Uncuff him." Kowalski frowned. "What?" "Margaret, the pilot says he made threats. He's a suspect." "Uncuff him right now," Margaret screamed, her voice echoing off the metal walls of the jet bridge. "Do you have any idea who this is?" "He's a squatter," Brenda chimed in, stepping out of the plane. "He refused to give up seat 1A. Margaret spun on Brenda, her eyes blazing with a fury that made the flight attendant recoil. "Shut your mouth, Brenda. You have done enough damage today to bankrupt us." She turned back to Damon. "Mr. King, I am so sorry. I received the call from Mr. Pierce just now. I ran all the way from Terminal 2. This is a catastrophic mistake." Kowalski looked between Margaret and Damon. "Margaret, who is this guy?" "This is Damon King," Margaret announced, her voice shaking. "He is the CEO of King Global Ventures. As of 8 a.m. this morning, he is the owner and chairman of Skyline Airways. He owns the plane. He owns the terminal lease. He signs the paychecks." The silence on the jet bridge was heavy, absolute, and suffocating. Captain Vance stopped dead in his tracks. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at Damon, really looked at him, and saw the confidence that he had mistaken for arrogance. He realized with a sinking horror that the phone hack wasn't a hack. "It was a command," Brenda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes widened as she replayed every insult she had hurled in the last 20 minutes. Street thug. Odor. Scam artist. Arthur Pellington, who had waddled out to watch the arrest, froze. His face drained of color, leaving him looking like wet dough. Officer Kowalski looked down at the handcuffs. He looked at Damon. He swallowed hard. "Is this true?" Kowalski asked. "Check my wallet," Damon said calmly, gesturing with his bound hands to his back pocket. "My ID is in there, along with the black card I used to buy the ticket." Kowalski hesitantly reached into Damon's pocket. He pulled out a sleek, black leather wallet. He opened it. He saw the driver's license, Damon King. He saw the Centurion card. He saw a business card that simply read, Damon King, CEO. "Oh boy," Kowalski whispered. He quickly unlocked the cuffs. "Mr. King, I apologize. I was acting on the information provided by the flight crew. They stated there was a threat." Damon rubbed his wrists. He didn't look at the cop. He looked at Vance. "The police did their job," Damon said, his voice cold. They reacted to a false report filed by the captain. Filing a false police report is a crime, isn't it, Sergeant? Yes, sir, it is, Kowalski said, turning his gaze toward Vance. I didn't know, Vance stammered, sweat pouring down his forehead. He didn't say who he was? He was dressed like... Like what? Damon stepped forward, closing the distance between him and the pilot. Like a black man in a hoodie? Does that dress code justify you putting your hands on me? Does it justify you lying to federal officers? I was protecting my ship, Vance argued, though his voice was weak. It's not your ship, Damon said. It's mine. Damon turned to Margaret. Ms. Stone, get a staircase hooked up to the main cabin door. I want everyone off this plane, now. Yes, sir. Immediately. And Margaret? Yes, Mr. King. Don't let the crew leave. I want the pilot, the co-pilot, and the entire flight attendant team lined up at the gate podium. And bring Mr. Pellington, too. I'm going to address my employees and my passengers. 10 minutes later, Gate B12 had been transformed into a theater of judgment. 300 passengers stood in the waiting area, a sea of confused and angry faces. They still didn't fully understand what was happening. They only knew the flight was canceled, and the man who had been arrested was now standing behind the podium holding a microphone. Behind Damon, lined up against the wall like prisoners facing a firing squad, stood the crew of Flight 808. Captain Vance stared at his shoes, his hat removed, clutching it with white knuckles. Brenda St. James was crying, her mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. The other flight attendants looked terrified, caught in the crossfire of a war they hadn't started. Arthur Pellington stood off to the side, trying to blend into the wall, looking like he wished he could dissolve into the molecules of the carpet. Damon tapped the microphone. The screech of feedback silenced the murmuring crowd. Can everyone hear me? Damon asked. His voice was calm, authoritative. He didn't sound like a victim. He sounded like a leader. My name is Damon King. I am the new owner of Skyline Airways. A gasp went through the crowd. Phones were raised. The woman from row 3 was live streaming. This was going viral in real time. I know you are all angry, Damon continued. You have places to be. Weddings, funerals, business meetings, vacations. You blame me for canceling this flight. Yeah, we do, a heckler shouted from the back. Good, Damon said. You should be angry. But you shouldn't be angry at me. You should be angry at the culture of this airline. A culture that judges people based on how they look rather than who they are. A culture that prioritizes bullies over paying customers. Damon pointed a finger at Arthur Pellington. Mr. Pellington there, Damon said, the spotlight of 300 pairs of eyes swinging to the sweating businessman. He decided that because he is a platinum member, he deserved my seat. A seat I paid for. He insulted me. He degraded me. And the crew? Damon turned to Brenda. She flinched as he looked at her. The crew didn't check his ticket. They didn't check mine. They saw a man in a suit and a man in a hoodie, and they made a choice. They chose to harass me, to threaten me, to lie to the police to have me arrested. Damon paused, letting the weight of the words settle. I bought this airline this morning to fix it. I didn't realize the rot started in the cockpit. He turned to Captain Vance. Captain Vance, step forward. Vance looked up, his eyes pleading. He took a shaky step toward the podium. How long have you flown for Skyline? Damon asked. 25 years. Vance rasped. And in 25 years, how many people have you kicked off planes because you didn't like their face? It was a misunderstanding, sir. I was under stress. The schedule. You put your hands on me, Damon interrupted, his voice booming. You shoved a passenger. You abused your authority. You are a liability to this company. Damon looked out at the crowd. I believe in accountability, so I'm going to do this publicly. Captain Vance, hand over your badge. Sir, please, Vance begged, tears welling in his eyes. I have a mortgage. I'm 2 years from retirement. I'll lose my pension. You should have thought about your pension before you assaulted a customer, Damon said coldly. Give me the badge. You are fired. Effective immediately. For cause. Meaning no severance, no pension, nothing. Vance's hand shook violently as he unclipped his wings and his ID badge. He placed them on the podium. He looked like a broken man. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the terminal crowd, a pariah. Damon turned to Brenda. She was sobbing loudly now, shaking her head. "Mr. King, please. I have kids. I'm a single mother. Please, I was just doing what the captain said." "Don't lie, Brenda," Damon said softly. "I was there. You started it. You called me a thug. You initiated the conflict. You are the face of this airline's hospitality. And today, you showed us that hospitality is dead." "I can change. I'll take retraining." "You can't train kindness," Damon said. "You're fired, Brenda. And because you filed a false police report, I'm instructing our legal team to cooperate fully with the DA's office if they choose to press charges. Get out of my terminal." Brenda wailed, a sound of pure despair, as security escorted her away. The crowd was silent. It was brutal. It was harsh. But it was justice. Damon looked at the remaining crew members, the co-pilot and the junior flight attendants. "The rest of you," Damon said, "you didn't start this. But you watched. You stood by and said nothing while a passenger was abused. That is cowardice. You are all suspended pending a full investigation. Leave your badges and go home." The podium was now piled with plastic ID cards and metal wings. Damon turned back to the crowd. "Now," he said, his voice softening, "that leaves the problem of you. My customers. You are stranded, and that is my fault." He signaled to Margaret Stone. "Margaret, how many A350s do we have on the tarmac?" "We have one that just arrived from Tokyo, sir. It's being cleaned now. It's a larger plane. More capacity." "Good," Damon said. "Here is what is going to happen. Everyone on this flight is being rebooked on that A350. It leaves in 90 minutes. We are calling in a fresh crew, a crew that knows how to treat people with respect." A murmur of relief went through the crowd. "But that's not enough," Damon said. "You lost time. You were stressed. So here's my apology. Every single passenger on this flight will receive a full refund of their ticket. You fly for free today." Cheers erupted. People started clapping. "And?" Damon raised his hand. "Everyone gets a voucher for one free round-trip ticket to anywhere Skyline flies, valid for 2 years. The cheering turned into a roar. The anger had evaporated, replaced by adulation. Damon had turned a PR disaster into a masterclass in brand loyalty. "Wait!" a voice shouted. It was Arthur Pellington. He was still standing there, looking like a rejected extra from a tragedy play. "What about me?" Pellington asked, trying to salvage some dignity. "I'm a platinum member. Do I get the voucher?" Damon looked at Pellington. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Pellington, I almost forgot about you." Damon walked over to the man. Pellington straightened his tie, thinking he might get off with a warning. After all, he was a paying customer, not an employee. "You are not an employee," Damon said, "so I can't fire you." "Exactly," Pellington said, relieved. "I demand to be rebooked on the new flight, in first class, as compensation for this ordeal." "I can't fire you," Damon repeated, "but I can ban you." Pellington's eyes widened. "What?" "Margaret," Damon called out, "revoke Mr. Pellington's status. Cancel his frequent flyer account. And place him on the corporate no-fly list. Effectively, immediately, he is banned from Skyline Airways and all our partner carriers." "You can't do that," Pellington screamed. "I have 2 million miles. That's worth $50,000. "Not anymore," Damon said. "Now it's worth 0. You can find another way to London, Arthur. I hear there are boats. Or maybe you can swim. But you will never step foot on one of my planes again. Security, remove him." 2 security guards stepped forward. Pellington fought them, screaming obscenities, kicking and spitting as they dragged him backward through the terminal. The crowd parted for him, many of them booing as he passed. Damon watched him go. He took a deep breath. He was exhausted. He turned to the crowd one last time. "Thank you for your patience. Enjoy your flight." He stepped down from the podium. The applause followed him. But the story wasn't over. As Damon walked toward the VIP lounge to finally get some coffee, He felt a vibration in his pocket. It was his personal phone. He looked at the screen. "Unknown number," he answered. "This is King." "Mr. King," a distorted digital voice rasped on the other end. "You made quite a scene today. You humiliated some powerful people." Damon stopped walking. "Who is this?" "Arthur Pellington isn't just a real estate agent, Mr. King. He handles money for people who don't like to be told no. You just cost him a very important meeting in London. A meeting that involved sensitive assets." "Is that a threat?" Damon asked. "It's a notification. You think you're the hunter because you bought an airline? You have no idea what jungle you just stepped into. Watch your back in London, Mr. King." The line went dead. Damon stared at the phone. The adrenaline that had been fueling him began to turn cold. He looked around the busy terminal. Suddenly, every face looked suspicious. Every person in a suit looked like a threat. He had won the battle at Gate B12. But he had just started a war he didn't even know existed. The replacement aircraft, a pristine Airbus A350, soared at 38,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean. The cabin was hushed, the lights dimmed to a soothing purple hue. To the casual observer, everything was perfect. The new crew was attentive, the champagne was chilled, and the passengers were sleeping the sleep of the vindicated, clutching their free vouchers in their dreams. But for Damon King, Seat 1A felt less like a throne and more like a bunker. He hadn't slept. The mysterious phone call at the gate had rattled him more than he cared to admit. "Arthur Pellington handles money for people who don't like to be told no." The words looped in his mind like a corrupted audio file. Damon was a numbers guy, a corporate raider who fought with spreadsheets and hostile takeovers. He wasn't a street fighter, despite what Brenda St. James had assumed. He opened his laptop, connecting to the plane's encrypted Wi-Fi. He needed to know who Arthur Pellington really was. A basic Google search revealed the surface. Arthur Pellington, 54, owner of Pellington Real Estate Holdings. A donor to local charities. A member of 3 country clubs. The picture of suburban success. But Damon dug deeper. He accessed King Global Ventures, proprietary data mining software, a program nicknamed The Shovel because it dug up dirt that didn't want to be found. He ran Pellington's tax ID through offshore registries. The screen flashed red. Shell company detected. Parent corporation Obsidian Logistics. Jurisdiction Cayman Islands. Damon frowned. Obsidian Logistics. He knew that name. When he was doing due diligence for the Skyline Airways acquisition, Obsidian had popped up as a quote consultant vendor. Skyline had been paying Obsidian $10 million a month for logistical support. Yet, there were no invoices, no service records, no paper trail. It was a black hole in the ledger. Damon had flagged it to be cut immediately upon takeover. "My God," Damon whispered, staring at the screen. Pellington wasn't just a rude passenger. He was the bagman. The reason Pellington was so desperate to get to London, the reason he needed to be in first class, likely to avoid scrutiny and be first off the plane, was that he was likely carrying something. Or rather, he was going to a meeting to secure the continuation of the payments. Damon had just fired the pilot who was likely on the payroll to look the other way, and he had banned the courier. He hadn't just interrupted a business trip, he had severed a multi-million-dollar money laundering pipeline that was using his new airline as a mule. Suddenly, his laptop screen flickered. The cursor moved on its own. Damon pulled his hands back from the keyboard. Windows began to open and close rapidly. Files were being deleted. A chat window popped up in the center of the black screen. "You should have stayed in New York." Damon's heart hammered against his ribs. He tried to force quit the program, but the keys were unresponsive. The hacker was in the system. They were in the plane's network. "Excuse me, sir?" Damon jumped, nearly knocking over his water glass. A flight attendant, a young woman named Veronica, who had replaced the toxic Brenda, was standing there with a concerned look. "Are you all right, Mr. King? You look pale." "I'm fine," Damon lied, slamming his laptop shut. "Just turbulence." "We're in smooth air, sir," Veronica said gently. She lowered her voice. "Actually, I wanted to tell you something. I used to work the London route with Brenda and Captain Vance. We all knew something was wrong." Damon looked up, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" Vance always insisted on specific flight paths. And Brenda, she would always block off the front lavatory for exactly 20 minutes after takeoff, specifically when Mr. Pellington was on board. We thought they were just having an affair or something. But once, I saw Pellington taping something behind the mirror. Damon's mind raced. The lavatory. Is the front lavatory occupied? Damon asked. No, sir. Guard the door. Don't let anyone in. Damon unbuckled and rushed to the small bathroom at the front of the cabin. He locked the door and stared at the mirror. He ran his fingers along the edge. It was sealed tight. He checked under the sink. Nothing. Then he looked at the trash compartment. He pulled the metal flap open and felt around the inner mechanism. His fingers brushed against something hard and cold, taped to the inside of the chute. He ripped it free. It was a USB drive, not a normal one, a military-grade encrypted drive. Pellington hadn't been carrying the data on his person. He had planted it on the inbound flight or had an accomplice do it, and he was meant to retrieve it on this flight. That's why he needed seat 1A. It was closest to the drop point. Damon held the drive up to the light. This was the leverage. This was the proof of whatever Obsidian Logistics was doing. But he was 30,000 feet in the air, his laptop was compromised, and the people who wanted this drive knew exactly where he was landing. The intercom crackled. It wasn't the captain. It was a robotic, automated voice. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. Please return to your seats. Descent? They were only 3 hours into a 7-hour flight. Damon looked out the window. The ocean was dark below, but he could see lights in the distance. They weren't near London. They were diverting. He rushed out of the bathroom. Veronica, where are we landing? Veronica looked at the control panel, her face white. I don't know, sir. The flight path just changed. The cockpit isn't answering the interphone. We're descending into, it looks like Nova Scotia, Halifax. It wasn't a standard diversion. The network that had hacked his laptop had hacked the flight plan. They were forcing the plane down in a remote location where they could get to him before he reached the safety of London. Damon King realized then that this wasn't just a story about a seat. It was a story about survival. The landing was rough. The A350 slammed onto the tarmac of Halifax Stanfield International Airport in the middle of a blinding snowstorm. The passengers, confused and frightened, muttered among themselves. The automated voice simply stated, "Technical stop. Remain seated." Damon knew better. He shoved the USB drive into his sock, tucking it deep against his ankle. He put his phone in his pocket. Veronica, Damon whispered. Listen to me carefully. Do not open the main cabin door. But the ground crew is signaling, she whispered back. They aren't ground crew, Damon said grimly. Through the snow-streaked window, Damon saw 3 black SUVs race onto the tarmac, bypassing the terminal and heading straight for the plane. Men in dark parkas jumped out. They didn't have luggage carts. They had tactical gear. The pilot, the new one, Captain Miller, finally emerged from the cockpit looking bewildered. Mr. King, our navigation system went haywire. It forced a landing. Tower says we have a security threat on board. They're demanding we hand over a passenger. Let me guess, Damon said. Me. Miller nodded slowly. They say you're wanted for corporate espionage. They have a warrant. It's fake, Damon said. If I get off this plane, I'm a dead man, and this airline goes under. Damon looked at the passengers. They were watching him again. The same people he had saved at JFK. Now he needed them. He walked to the PA system. He didn't have time for speeches, but he had to try. Folks, this is Damon. The men outside are not police. They are hired guns working for the man we kicked off in New York. They want me. If they take me, they take the evidence I have of their crimes. He took a breath. I need you to be witnesses. Get your phones out. Record everything. If they breach this door, stream it to the world. Darkness fears the light. A heavy thud shook the fuselage. The boarding stairs had been hooked up. Someone was hammering on the outer door. Open up! Transport safety! A muffled voice shouted. Don't do it! Damon ordered Miller. I have to, sir. It's federal law. Miller reached for the lever. No! The door flew open. A blast of freezing air and snow swirled into the cabin. 3 men stormed in. They weren't wearing badges. They wore generic security uniforms with no insignias. The leader, a scar-faced man with dead eyes, scanned the cabin. Damon King, the man barked. You're coming with us. Damon stood in the aisle, seat 1A between him and the intruders. I want to see a warrant. I want to see local police. This is extra-jurisdictional rendition, the man said, using a lot of words to say kidnapping. He reached for a baton. Come quietly or we drag you. Hey! The shout didn't come from Damon. It came from row 3, the tech executive who had been annoyed earlier. He stood up, blocking the aisle. You heard the man, the executive said. Show us a badge. Sit down, the intruder yelled. No, you sit down. A large woman from row 5 stood up. Then the couple from row 2. Then the entire first-class cabin. You want him? You go through us, someone shouted from economy. The passengers were standing up. Hundreds of them. They had seen Damon King defend them against a tyrant captain. They had seen him fire a racist crew. He had given them dignity, free flights, and respect. Now, the karma was coming back. He had protected them. Now they were protecting him. The intruders hesitated. They were mercenaries, prepared to grab one man. They weren't prepared to fight 300 angry passengers, armed with smartphones that were broadcasting live to Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. We are live with 40,000 viewers, the woman from row 3 screamed. The world is watching you. The leader of the mercenaries looked at the sea of phones. He looked at Damon, who stood resolute amidst his army of travelers. He touched his earpiece. Abort, he muttered. Too many eyes. It's a PR nightmare. They backed away. This isn't over, King, the leader hissed. They turned and fled into the snow, jumping back into their SUVs and peeling away before the real Royal Canadian Mounted Police, whose sirens were finally wailing in the distance, could arrive. Damon slumped into seat 1A, his adrenaline crashing. Veronica handed him a bottle of water. Her hands were shaking. That was intense. That, Damon said, looking at the passengers who were high-fiving and cheering, was loyalty. We treat them right, they treat us right. The RCMP arrived minutes later. Damon explained the situation, showed them the technical glitch logs, and handed over a copy of the USB drive contents. He was smart enough not to give up the original. The flight was cleared to continue to London. The technical glitch was overridden. But Damon knew the endgame wasn't in Canada. It was in the boardroom in London. London was gray and rainy, but to Damon it looked like a battlefield. He didn't go to his hotel. He didn't go to his sister's house to see the baby. Not yet. It wasn't safe. He went straight to the Skyline Airways European headquarters in Canary Wharf. He had called an emergency board meeting from the air. The remaining board members, the old guard who had worked with the previous CEO, were waiting. They looked smug. They had seen the news reports of the chaos on Flight 808. They had seen the stock price dipping due to the uncertainty. They thought they had Damon cornered. They thought they could force a vote of no confidence and oust him before he even unpacked his bags. Sitting at the head of the table was Lord Sterling, the chairman of the board. A man with a posh accent and a heart of coal. He was Pellington's real boss. Damon walked into the boardroom. He was still wearing the gray hoodie. He hadn't showered. He looked rough. Mr. King, Lord Sterling said, checking his watch. You're late. And frankly, you're underdressed. We have prepared a severance package. Given the public embarrassment you've caused with the Pellington incident, a very prominent investor, I might add, we feel it is best you step down. Damon didn't sit. He threw the USB drive onto the mahogany table. It slid across the polished surface and hit Sterling's water glass with a clink. What is this? Sterling asked, disdain dripping from his voice. That, Damon said, is the ledger for Obsidian Logistics. It contains the records of $120 million embezzled from this airline over the last 5 years. It lists the bribes paid to customs officials. It lists the payments to Captain Vance to smuggle contraband. And, most interestingly, it lists the offshore accounts where the money ended up. Damon leaned over the table, placing his hands flat on the wood. Guess whose name is on the main account, Sterling? Sterling's face went the color of ash. The other board members shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. This is bricated, Sterling stammered. The FBI and Scotland Yard don't think so, Damon said. I emailed the files to them from the plane right after we left Halifax. They're in the lobby right now. As if on cue, the double doors burst open. Detectives in suits, flanked by uniformed officers, marched in. Lord Sterling, the lead detective, announced, "You are under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit racketeering." "You can't do this," Sterling shouted as they hauled him up. "I am a knight of the realm. I know the Prime Minister." "Tell it to the judge," Damon said. As Sterling was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming threats, Damon looked at the remaining board members. "Anyone else want to question my dress code?" Damon asked softly. Silence. Absolute silence. "Good. Now we have work to do. We're going to rebrand. We're going to lower prices. And we're going to make sure that every single person who steps onto a Skyline plane is treated like royalty, whether they're wearing a bespoke suit or a $40 hoodie." 3 days later, Damon finally made it to his sister's house in Notting Hill. He sat on the sofa, holding his newborn niece, Maya. She was tiny, fragile, and perfect. She had no idea her uncle had just taken down an international crime syndicate. "You look tired, Day," his sister Jasmine said, handing him a cup of tea. "Was the fight okay?" Damon looked down at the baby. He thought about Brenda St. James, currently facing charges for filing a false police report. He thought about Vance, stripped of his license. He thought of Pellington, who had been arrested trying to board a private jet to Belize. And he thought of the passengers in Halifax, standing up for him in the snow. "The flight was long," Damon smiled, rocking the baby. "But we landed safely. That's all that matters." His phone buzzed. A notification from YouTube. The video of the incident at JFK, the one filmed by the passenger in row 3, had hit 50 million views. The title was, "CEO in Hoodie Teaches Racist VIP a Lesson, Legendary Ending." The comments were flooding in. "Skyline Airways for life. This is what leadership looks like. I'm buying a ticket just to support this guy." Damon put the phone away. He didn't need the views. He didn't need the fame. He had his family, he had his company, and most importantly, he had his dignity. He looked at his niece. "Don't worry, Maya," he whispered. "Uncle Damon is going to make sure the world is a little bit better for you when you grow up. And if anyone tells you you don't belong in the front seat, you tell them who your uncle is." The rain tapped against the window, washing away the grime of the city, leaving everything clean, new, and ready to fly. Damon King's journey wasn't just about a plane seat. It was a war for respect, in a world that often judges books by their covers. He stripped away the rod of the old guard and proved that true power isn't in a title or a suit, but in character and justice. The karma that hit Pellington, Vance, and Sterling wasn't just luck. It was the inevitable result of their own arrogance. Damon didn't just win a business deal, he won the hearts of the people. If you enjoyed this story of massive revenge and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends to show them what real leadership looks like. And subscribe for more dramatic stories of karma striking back. See you in the next video.